Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Cinematic Excrement, and the final chapter of the... Wait. Sorry, I'm forgetting something here. I know I am. What am... Oh, of course. Hang on. I'm sorry. Let's just take a second. Let's see if I can just... How do I turn this fucking thing off? Okay, there we go. That's better. Let's try this again. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Cinematic Excrement, and the final chapter of the My Sister Hates Me trilogy, Battlefield Earth. This should be fun.
Released in 2000, Battlefield Earth is one of those movies that often pops up on people's lists of the worst movies of all time. While the L. Ron Hubbard novel on which the movie is based garnered mixed reviews from critics and fans, response to the movie was almost universally negative. The film currently holds a 2% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Roger Ebert described it as like taking a bus trip with someone who has needed a bath for a long time. It's not merely bad, it's unpleasant in a hostile way. On an episode of The Daily Show, Jon Stewart described it as a cross between Star Wars and the smell of ass. And Robin Rousey of the LA Times, and no doubt countless other people, asked of the movie's star, John Travolta, what was he thinking?
Before we take a look at the movie itself, let's take a look at a short history of its production. A history you probably don't care about, but I'm going to tell you anyway because it's my show and you can't stop me. Whatever, I do what I want.
The book, which for the record I haven't read, was published in 1982. At the time, it was Hubbard's first science fiction work in over 30 years and quickly shot to the top of the New York Times bestseller list, though it allegedly did so under dubious circumstances. Reportedly, Hubbard sent John Travolta an autographed copy of the book, hoping he could make it into a feature film. Travolta, a member of Hubbard's controversial Church of Scientology since 1975, agreed the story had potential as a film and started shopping it around to studios, with the intention of playing the part of the story's hero, Johnny Goodboy Tyler. Yes, that's actually the character's name.
Is it just me, or does that make the character sound like a dog? Johnny, good boy, play fetch?
Unfortunately, Travolta's star power had faded a bit in the 80s due to one flop after another, and he couldn't find a studio willing to take on his pet project. However, things started to look up for Travolta with the release of Quentin Tarantino's Pulp Fiction, which earned him an Oscar nomination for Best Actor. With his influence in Hollywood greatly increased, he decided to take another stab at a Battlefield Earth movie. Unfortunately, studios were still wary of the project for several reasons. They felt the story was outdated, they foresaw the film as having a dangerously high effects budget, and they felt Travolta's involvement with Scientology could also be a black mark on the production. MGM and 20th Century Fox both turned it down, but the project was ultimately picked up in 1998 by the newly founded Franchise Pictures, the studio that brought you the first movie in the My Sister Hates Me trilogy, Ballistic X vs. Sever.
There's a good sign.
The studio somehow convinced Travolta to agree to a $10 million salary, half of his usual pay at the time. This, along with moving the production to Canada, reduced the budget to a more feasible $75 million. Since Travolta was now a bit old for the role of Johnny Goodboy, that part was given to Barry Pepper, and Travolta was cast as the villain. Roger Christian, who worked as an art director on the Star Wars films, was hired to direct after he was personally recommended to Travolta by George Lucas.
Because if anyone knows what makes a great director, it's probably not George Lucas.
J.D. Shapiro was hired to write a screenplay, but constantly butted heads with Travolta and the producers who wanted something more faithful to the novel. He was eventually replaced with Corey Mandel, and much of what ended up on the screen was his work. It makes you wonder what could have been. Despite some bad buzz leading up to the film's release, the head of Franchise Pictures, Eli Samaha, was extremely enthusiastic and quite convinced it would be a hit, going so far as to claim the film is going to make people in Hollywood take notice of Eli Samaha. I'm not going to be the laughingstock anymore.
Little did he know.
The film was hated by critics and moviegoers alike and flopped at the box office, earning just under $30 million worldwide, well below its reported $75 million production and $20 million marketing budgets. It also won 7 Golden Raspberry Awards, a record at the time, and was later given a special award for Worst Picture of the Decade, which was publicly accepted by J.D. Shapiro.
I want to really thank Corey Mandel for rewriting my screenplay in a way I never, ever, ever could have imagined or conceived of myself. I especially want to thank the dozens and dozens of people who went to see the movie.
But the troubles didn't stop there. Oh no. Shortly after the film's release, the FBI began investigating certain independent movie studios, including Franchise Pictures, to find out if they artificially inflated the budgets of their films in order to scam investors. Turns out, according to bank records, the actual cost of producing Battlefield Earth was about $44 million, not $75 million. This revelation led to a lawsuit from Entertainment AG, a German company which had acquired the European distribution rights to Battlefield Earth as part of a package deal that also included The Art of War and the whole 9 yards, in exchange for paying what they thought was 47% of the production costs. But thanks to some shady accounting, it was actually as much as 90%. Entertainment AG was awarded a settlement of over $120 million, and Franchise Pictures was forced to file for bankruptcy.
And that's the story of one of the greatest punchlines in cinema history. And now it's time to find out why this movie is so reviled. Let's take a look at the absolute mess that is Battlefield Earth. Oh, and don't expect any Scientology jokes in this review, because this movie's plot has about as much to do with Scientology as ballet dancing has to do with auto repair.
Our story begins in the year 3000 AD with, what else, a text crawl. And we learn the Earth was taken over 1,000 years prior by an alien race called the Cyclos. First Johnny Goodboy, and now Cyclos. I'm starting to think L. Ron Hubbard wasn't very good at naming things. And why did they conquer the planet, you might well ask? Because they wanted our gold.
Which means the Cyclos must be led by none other than... Goldfinger! Or maybe it was this guy, who knows.
We further learn that mankind is on the verge of extinction, and are then told man is an endangered species. Which means the same thing. We're introduced to this endangered species, which has apparently regressed to a primitive culture over the last 1,000 years. One of these people is Johnny Goodboy Tyler, played by Barry Pepper. He returns home and is greeted by his girlfriend, Chrissy, whose hair appears very nicely permed considering the primitive society they live in.
This is all the medicine I can find.
I'm sorry. The gods took your father in the night.
I'm about to make a painfully obvious joke. I apologize for nothing. So Johnny sets about burying his recently departed... Wait. That's it? We're done with Johnny's dad already? Just 5 seconds of a burial scene and we're moving on? Okay, whatever. Johnny points out to the village elder that they're running out of food and they should consider moving on. But the elder refuses to leave as he fears the demons that live in the Forbidden Land.
Have you ever seen one? Have you? Has anyone here ever seen one? A demon! A monster! A beast!
Johnny, did you start smoking the ceremonial herbs a bit early this evening?
But the elder insists the stories are true and refuses to leave, insultingly referring to Johnny as a greener. This is a term that comes up a few times in the movie, and apparently it's a reference to someone who thinks the grass is greener on the other side. Well, considering you live in a rocky environment, the grass probably is greener on the other side. Literally. Johnny doesn't buy the elder's stories and decides to leave the village in search of greener pastures, if you will, leaving his girlfriend behind. Pharaoh! Let my people... Hey, damn it, I wasn't done! By the way, get used to that transition effect because director Roger Christian sure loves his curtain wipes. In fact, it happens 22 times in this movie. Yeah, I counted, what of it? But you know what he loves even more than curtain wipes? Dutch angles. Almost every freaking shot in this movie is filmed with the camera tilted. Why? Well, according to the DVD commentary, Christian wanted the movie to look like a comic book, and since every image in a comic strip is at an angle, he decided to do the same for the movie.
There are, of course, several problems with this idea. 1. Comic frames aren't always drawn at an angle. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. 2. Even if they were, what works in one medium doesn't necessarily work in another. And 3, like almost any filmmaking technique, when you overuse it, you ruin it.
When I look at this movie, I don't see a comic book. I see a movie made by a director who either doesn't understand why Dutch angles are used or has a broken tripod. Typically, the point of a Dutch angle is to create a sense of tension or uneasiness. And I will admit this does leave me feeling uneasy, but only because I keep tilting my head back and forth to match the frame and it's making me dizzy. Anyway, back to the story. Johnny eventually comes across an abandoned mini golf course and runs into 2 other humans. Carlo, played by Kim Coates, and a fat guy who will soon be cannon fodder, so I won't bother to learn his name. They offer to show Johnny their gods if he will spare some food. He offers up a rabbit he apparently hunted off screen, and they take him to the remains of a city that appears to be in remarkably good condition considering it's been abandoned for 1,000 years. Of course, what they refer to as gods are really just old statues that they claim are gods that were frozen as punishment. This probably would have been funnier if they had the budget for something other than a generic Muffler Man statue. This is Ronald, the jester god. He was well liked among the gods until they caught him peddling his terrible food to the children of the world, and he was frozen as punishment. They take shelter for the night in what looks like the remains of a shopping mall. Oh, come on. Even if he's never encountered glass before, how could he not see that? There's water dripping off of it, for Christ's sake. You're trying too hard, movie. While they're enjoying their dinner, they're suddenly attacked by an as yet unseen creature with a laser gun.
And it's moving in slow motion, so you know it means business.
The laser blast that throws Carlo into a wall somehow only stuns him, while the fat guy is killed by a blast that hardly moves him at all. Maybe his excess weight held him in place, I don't know. Johnny tries to run, but he too is shot by the as yet unseen creature and stumbles through several plate glass windows before collapsing because the director saw Blade Runner once. Johnny and Carlo wake up later to find they have been taken captive by the as yet unseen creatures, along with a few other humans. They are taken to a large dome that houses the creature's base of operations and contains the atmosphere of their home planet. Fortunately, they are kind enough to provide the humans with breathing masks. Unfortunately, when they're wearing them, they look like they have 2 giant trails of snot pouring out of their noses. And aesthetics aside, this mask looks like a really stupid design. It won't allow you to breathe out of your mouth, so if you catch a cold, you're pretty much screwed. Upon arrival, the as yet unseen creatures are finally revealed to be the alien race known as the Cyclos, which look like Klingons with dreadlocks walking on stilts.
I suppose it could be worse. Admittedly, I'm not sure how, but there must be a way.
Johnny suddenly grabs one of the Cyclos' guns and shoots him dead, and the other Cyclos in the area quickly respond by letting him run away. Huh. But he doesn't get far, as he soon runs into our main villains for this movie, Turl, played by John Travolta, and his assistant Kerr, played by Forrest Whitaker. While the former was reportedly very happy with this movie, for some reason, Whitaker later said he regretted taking part. I can't say I blame him. If I was made up to look like the Jamaican Cowardly Lion, I'd have regrets too. Turl is informed that the man-animal, as they like to call him, shot one of the guards. But for some reason, Turl doesn't believe him, and he hands Johnny the gun so he can... Wait, what?
I'll be damned.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, our villains really are that stupid. How they managed to take over the planet and enslave humanity is beyond me.
A few curtain wipes later, we learn Turl is the interim chief of security for a Cyclo gold mining operation on Earth. His district manager teleports to Earth from the head office, because the only thing worse than evil aliens is evil alien corporations, and it seems to me the Cyclo conversations consist of little else but someone saying something stereotypically evil, while everyone else responds with stereotypically evil laughter. How cliched can you get?
Once we finish mining out this miserable little planet, let's do the universe a favor. Let's exterminate the lot of them.
Maniacal laugh. Maniacal laugh. Maniacal laugh.
They have a meeting in a dark room that looks like it hasn't been cleaned since the Cyclo invasion, and Turl is quite surprised to learn that his upcoming transfer off this planet has been postponed.
We've decided to keep you here for another 50 cycles. With endless options for renewal. With endless options for renewal. With endless options for renewal.
Why am I suddenly echoing? Why am I suddenly echoing? Why am I suddenly echoing? Evidently, they decided to keep Turl on this planet as punishment because he had an illicit relationship with some senator's daughter. What exactly does this have to do with the plot?
If you said nothing, you win! And that is also your prize.
Turl does what any sensible man would do in this situation. Head to the bar and get shit-faced. And this is where we get to truly experience John Travolta's ridiculous overacting. And it is a treat to watch.
I can assure you that I was not groomed since birth to have some cushy job that even a moron like you could perform. While you were still learning how to spell your name, I was being trained to conquer galaxies.
God bless you, John Travolta.
By the way, why is it that most of the Cyclos in this movie look very different from Turl? Almost all of the actors have full facial prosthetics, but Travolta, Whitaker, and most of the important Cyclos have had their faces relatively untouched. It just looks inconsistent. And speaking of inconsistency, what is up with Turl's hands? If you look closely, you'll notice Turl's right hand has 6 fingers, even though his left hand has 5. And as far as I can tell, all other Cyclo hands in the movie have 5. What is up with that mysterious 6th finger? Is he some sort of mutant? Did he once murder a Spanish sword maker whose son has been hunting him ever since, hungry for revenge?
20 bonus points if you got that.
Well, enough about the Cyclos. Let's check in with the humans. Apparently it's feeding time, but just as Johnny is about to chow down on whatever that is, he's stopped by a gang leader who tells him he and his men eat first. Johnny doesn't take kindly to this, and a fight ensues with Johnny coming out on top.
We have enough problems without killing each other over food.
Especially food that looks like fermented walrus vomit. So after this fight, it looks like Johnny becomes the de facto leader of the humans, and I guess we're done with that scene. Back to the Cyclos we go. Kerr has discovered a new gold vein, but the area also contains large deposits of uranium. This is a problem because, as Kerr exposits, the Cyclo's breath gas, that's really what they call it, explodes when it comes in contact with radiation. Don't ask me how that works. The man animals can survive near uranium without exploding, so Turl decides to attempt to train some of them to mine. But before we can get to that, we go back to Johnny, who has attempted another escape. This one goes about as well as the first, and it introduces another one of the film's inconsistencies. In this shot, the Cyclos are speaking in their own language with subtitles, but not 30 seconds later, they're speaking English.
Okay, now, pull its breath mask off.
And this isn't the only time the Cyclo language magically turns into English in mid-scene. Do they speak a different language or not, movie? Make up your mind. They decide to kill Johnny by taking him into the dome, removing his mask, and betting on how long he can last without it. Not sure why they gave him one in the first place if that was their plan, but whatever. Johnny somehow manages to find a way out of the dome through the sewers, which are apparently not sealed off to prevent the Cyclo atmosphere from leaking out. How have these morons survived on this planet for the last millennium without accidentally killing themselves off? Johnny is ultimately cornered by Turl and Kerr and captured once again. Rather than kill him, Turl recognizes Johnny's resourcefulness and wonders if he could be trained.
What do you think a man animal would like to eat? What do you think he would consider a treat?
How crap should I know? There's no way of knowing that, sir.
You have got to be kidding me! 1,000 years on this planet, and they haven't figured out what humans eat? Even by accident? Again, I must ask, how did these fools conquer the planet? I wouldn't think them capable of conquering a preschool.
Oh, but it gets worse. Here's how they figure out what man's favorite food is. They take Johnny and a couple of other humans into the mountains and set them free, and then wait to see what they eat. After not being able to find any food for 3 days, they finally find some rats and eat them since it's better than starving to death. And Turl assumes they're eating the rats because that's their favorite treat.
Aliens is stupid.
Now that their pointless little experiment is over, they recapture the man animals and Turl hooks Johnny up to something he calls a learning machine.
Excuse me, but I am your instructor if you will forgive such arrogance. for I do not have the honor to be a Cyclo. I am but a lowly Klinko language slave.
Wait. So the Cyclos have no way of figuring out what humans eat, but they were able to build a machine that can speak and understand their language. What?
As you are listening to me, I most likely do not exist.
Yeah, the terrible CGI kinda gave that away. Turtle switches the machine on, and it quickly fills Johnny's head with knowledge of the Cyclos, like where they come from and how to speak their language. Oh yes, tell the man-animal who has made multiple escape attempts and killed 2 of your soldiers everything there is to know about your people. I'm sure nothing bad could possibly come from that.
Spoiler alert, yes it can.
He also learns various things like Euclidean geometry, molecular biology, etc., and when he returns to his cell that night, he tries to explain what he's learned to the other humans. But it only seems to confuse them, much like this movie's plot confuses the audience.
Thought we were supposed to be working on stuff to help us escape.
This will. All this will.
Spoiler alert, no it won't.
But his knowledge of the Cyclo language does help them get into the armory, and they steal some weapons so they can mount a surprise attack on Turl and Kerr.
If any of you rat brains knew anything about firearms, you would know that you never store loaded weapons.
Oh, so they're not completely stupid. They're pretty close, but they're not quite there.
For some reason, Turl decides not to kill the humans that just tried to kill him, but he does take Johnny to the ruins of a nearby library. And while the building itself certainly looks worse for wear, the books inside are all fully intact despite being exposed to the elements for the past 1,000 years. Bullshit. Turl's reason for taking him here is to dash Johnny's hope of ever overthrowing the Cyclos by showing him everything that man knew in the year 2000 when the Cyclos invaded. In spite of all our knowledge and technology, the Earth was conquered in just 9 minutes. Keep that in the back of your mind, will ya? To further demonstrate how powerful the Cyclos are, Turl brings Johnny and a few other men to a herd of cows and proceeds to start shooting their legs off.
Well, that's unnecessarily cruel. But on the bright side, steak for dinner!
While he's busy shooting the cows, a party of wild men come out of nowhere and disarm Turl. Johnny grabs the gun, and the others urge him to kill the ugly alien menace, but Johnny refuses as he's not content with simply running away and living in hiding. He wants to be free from the Cyclos once and for all, and urges them to bide their time and wait for the right moment to attack. He then gives Turl back his weapon, and the big ugly alien says he has another surprise for Johnny. How long can they drag this scene out? They've somehow captured Chrissy off screen and found a hand-drawn picture of Johnny on her person, proving she knows him. They snap an explosive collar around her neck and threaten to blow her head off if Johnny tries anything stupid. Reluctantly, Johnny agrees to mine their gold. After a short scene involving Turl teaching Johnny how to fly one of the Cyclo ships using a simulator that looks like a crappy PS2 game, it's time for the man-animals to start mining for gold. Turl can't keep an eye on them personally because of the radiation, but he assures Johnny that he will be watching via a ship that occasionally flies over the dig site. Sure enough, it doesn't take Johnny long to figure out a way around that. With some help from the wild men who attacked Turl earlier, he splits the group in two. One half stays and pretends to mine, the other half flies to Fort Hood in Texas to acquire weapons. For some reason, Fort Hood still has electricity. Where is it coming from? In addition to various guns, they find a nuclear bomb, which probably wouldn't be very useful after 1,000 years of decay, several fighter jets, all of which are somehow fully fueled and in perfect working condition despite sitting unmaintained in a bunker for a millennium, and a flight simulator they can use to learn how to fly the jets, which is clearly labeled USMC, United States Marine Corps. Fort Hood is an army base.
I don't think there's a single thing in that scene that they got right. Not one. That's actually kind of impressive. In a what the hell is wrong with you kind of way.
Now that they have their weapons, it's time for the battle plan. They're going to blow the Cyclo Dome, exposing the aliens to Earth's atmosphere and killing them. This will prompt the planet Cyclo to send reinforcements, but before they can, they'll send the nuclear bomb through the teleporter. Since Cyclo atmosphere reacts explosively to radiation, the bomb will destroy the planet. I would ask how the planet Cyclo managed to survive this long without ever coming into contact with anything radioactive, but I know that question will never be answered. While they're planning the attack, they still have to worry about delivering the gold to Turl. Since there's no way they can mine enough in time, they fly over to Fort Knox? Are you fucking kidding me? The main reason the Cyclos took over and continue to occupy this planet was to take our gold, and yet they never found the gold depository at Fort Knox? After 1,000 fucking years, you'd think they would have stumbled onto it by now. And when they bring the gold back to Turl, he is naturally a bit surprised to find it's already smelted into bars. Johnny gives him a lame-ass excuse.
I assume, sir, that the Cyclo of your refinement wouldn't settle for anything as coarse as raw ore.
And wouldn't you know it, he buys it.
I know I said it already, but it bears repeating. Aliens is stupid.
Meanwhile, Kerr has managed to obtain recordings of Turl discussing his plan to mine the gold and keep it for himself, rather than turning it into the Home Office. And he tells Turl he's made a copy of these recordings and given them to someone for safekeeping. But they'll never see the light of day as long as he gets a larger share of the gold. This might sound weird considering I've done nothing but bash the movie up to this point, but I kinda like this scene. No, seriously, this banter between Turl and Kerr is actually pretty entertaining. It's a shame more of the movie wasn't like this.
I hate these things. I feel like it's a test that I'm not prepared for.
Well, hell, it could even be our friendly bartender!
Not a good time to lose one's head.
Please, I made a mistake.
Huh, you shot off my hand. Well, I see no reason to have a reaction.
By the way, if you were expecting a certain Monty Python reference, sit tight. We'll get to it.
The miners return to the dome and quickly break the other humans out of the cages, and Johnny removes the explodey collar from Chrissy's neck. That'll come in handy later. While Carlo flies up to the top of the dome to plant some explosives, Johnny leads a squad against the guards patrolling outside. They take a few of them out, but the shooting alerts more troops to their presence.
5 guards from the south, heavily armed and moving fast.
And by fast, I mean slow. It's a slow sort of fast. That makes sense, right?
The fast-moving guards soon find Johnny, and we get a slow-motion sequence that looks very familiar. If you don't recognize it, here's a hint. While the humans continue their assault on the ground and the fighter jets join the battle in the air, Johnny gets to work firing up the teleporter so expendable human number 528 can bring the bomb to Cyclo and blow the planet to Kingdom Come. Unfortunately, Turl stops Johnny just in time, and the bomb Carlo planted cracks the dome, but it stays up. However, he manages to take out the dome a minute later with a suicide run, and with his army decimated, Turl activates the very teleporter he was just trying to shut off a minute ago. Dude, make up your mind. As he calls Cyclo for reinforcements, Johnny attacks Turl and slaps the explodey collar around his arm. Turl fights him off and grabs the detonator, assuming the collar is still attached to Chrissy, and somehow not noticing the fact that Johnny just hooked that collar onto his arm. How does this guy even remember to breathe? He hits the button and boom goes the dynamite.
'Tis but a scratch. A scratch? Your arm's off. No, it isn't.
I told you we'd get to it.
The teleporter activates, the nuclear bomb is transferred to Cyclo and detonated, and oh shit, there goes the planet. May I remind you that in the year 2000, planet Earth was decimated by the Cyclos in a mere 9 minutes. Yet that same alien race was not only defeated, but nearly rendered extinct by the exact same weapons and technology available at that time, and used by primitive people with only a fraction of the training.
However did they win?
And our story ends with Turl locked up in a cell inside Fort Knox, surrounded by the very gold he so desperately wanted but couldn't be bothered to look for right under his fucking nose. And for some reason, Kerr has joined the humans. Sure, why not?
Why don't you vaporize me?
If there are other Cyclo colonies out there, They'll send out their gas drones and exterminate us. But if they learn that it was your greed that destroyed their home planet, then all the credits in the universe won't equal to the bounty that they put on your head.
And what makes you think the Cyclos won't just kill you after they're done with Turl? You didn't think this through very well, did you? Come to think of it, I could say the same of the people who made this movie.
So, that was Battlefield Earth. And now I know why this movie gets all the hate it does. The acting is over the top, the dialogue is weak, the villains are stupid, the directing is amateur at best, the costumes are laughable, and the special effects range from okay to oh no. I will admit it did have a few enjoyable moments here and there, but for the most part, it was just dumb. And would you believe they actually wanted to make a sequel? I shit you not, the original plan was to make 2 movies. The book Battlefield Earth is about 1,000 pages long, and the movie only covers the first half. The sequel would have covered the second half, but since the movie failed to find an audience, I think it's safe to say we won't be seeing the conclusion of Hubbard's novel on the big screen anytime soon.
And we're probably better off for it. Next time, we'll take a look at some more stupid sci-fi, though this will be something a little more recent. Until then, I'm the Smeghead, and Hollywood can suck it.
While you were still learning how to spell your name, I was being trained to conquer galaxies.